These two pieces of basswood, same laser, same machine, same image. One looks like it was engraved by someone who'd never heard of contrast. The other, that's what you get when you actually test your settings instead of guessing. I asked AI to design me the optimum workflow for photo engraving on basswood using my XTool S1. And today, I'm stress testing every single recommendation it gave me.
I'm Mick. This is Limey Cottage Crafts, where AI meets the workshop. And together we discover what actually works.
Here's the exact question I put to the AI. No fluff, no hand-holding. I said, what are the optimum workflow and settings to engrave a photo onto a basswood card? I have Photoshop for any image corrections and amendments. Let's walk through what it came back with, and I'll tell you what I think as we go. The first thing to grab my attention is the importance of Photoshop image preparation. If we get this right, we have 80% of the quality complete. Cropping tight to the head and removing the background reduces any noise, simplify the image to grayscale, and then fine-tune the settings. The final point here is selecting Jarvis dither. We can then move on to my XTool S1 with some suggested settings. Finally, the AI has included an important note in terms of the grain direction. Now, some of this is solid, some of it I want to verify. And a couple of things the AI said I'm going to challenge because I think the numbers are off for this specific combination of machine and material. Let's find out. The AI correctly flagged this first. Not all photos engrave equally. High contrast images with clear mid-tones work best. Avoid anything with very fine gradients or busy backgrounds. I'm using a portrait here. Good tonal range, clear subject. I translated the Photoshop advice into a simple infographic just to make it easier to follow. First step is to retouch the image to remove any dust or scratches. For old pictures, especially in our memorial cards, take care not to remove too much of the character. Next, crop the image to just the head and shoulders with a 1:1 aspect ratio. Now we can remove the background and replace with a white background. Here's where we get our first area of dissonance. The AI is suggesting altering various levels to get black and white, whereas the easiest thing to do is to transfer to grayscale. We're not engraving colour, the laser doesn't care about hue. What it cares about is luminance. Getting out of RGB now prevents you making decisions your laser physically can't execute. Levels adjustment is where most people go wrong. Open levels, Ctrl plus L. The AI recommended pulling the black point in to around 20 to 30 and the white point down to around 220 to 230. The logic is correct. Basswood doesn't give you true black or true white, so you're pre-compensating for the material's limited tonal range. The AI suggested a contrast boost of around +15 to +25. I'd agree. Laser engraving compresses mid-tones, so pushing contrast into the image pre-compensates for that compression. Don't overdo it. You'll lose detail in shadows. The AI said match DPI to your engraving resolution. If you're running at 500 DPI on the laser, export at 500 DPI. This is a critical point a lot of tutorials skip. A mismatch here causes pixel interpolation that blurs your engraving. Match them exactly. For the XTool S1 we're running at 254 dots per inch, so this is what we will set. Filter to sharpen to unsharp mask. AI recommendation, amount 80 to 120%, radius 1.0 to 1.5 pixels, threshold 0. This is a well-validated technique for laser prep. Sharpening enhances edge definition that the engraving process will partially soften. Think of it as pre-sharpening for anticipated loss. Finally, export. as PNG or BMP, uncompressed. Never JPEG for laser engraving. JPEG compression introduces artifacts at pixel level that show up in your burn. The AI got this right. This is where I'm going to stress test the AI's numbers properly. It gave me a starting point which you can see on the screen. I'm not just going to run those once and call it validated. I've set up a parameter matrix, different speeds, different powers, same DPI. Let's engrave them and measure the results against our success criteria. My hypothesis is that the AI's power range is slightly conservative for basswood card. Basswood has a tight, consistent grain that can handle a little more energy than you'd use on harder or more resinous woods. I'm testing power from 15% through to 35% in 5% increments. Speed will vary from 100 to 500 millimeters per second in increments of 100 and success criteria. Visible tonal range across highlights, mid-tones and shadows. No char bleed beyond 0.2 millimeters. No grain lifting. Legible fine detail in the face. Here's what we got. On the array we can see that low power, high speed is too light. As we increase power and reduce speed, the engraving darkens until we are left with a scorched mess in the bottom right corner. The sweet spot is somewhere here. So the AI's range was right directionally but needed calibrating to this specific basswood cardstock. That's the whole point of this channel. AI gives you a validated starting hypothesis. We give you the proven answer. The 254 DPI is the right call for portrait work. The AI nailed this one. One final point was to engrave perpendicular to the grain. Possibly less concerning for a plywood, I still wanted to test this as well, and this is the result. The definition is very clear, and this is a solid facsimile of the prepared photo. So after running the full matrix, here's the validated workflows for photo engraving on basswood card with the XTool S1 40 watts. Although we did not cover in the video, I have included material preparation in the engraving workflow. For portraits on basswood with a 40 watt diode, a light seal before engraving is recommended, but not for the reason most hobbyists think. I will cover this in more detail in future videos, but in short, a light seal hardens surface fibres, reduces soot absorption, improves dot definition, makes tonal transitions cleaner. That's exactly what portrait engraving needs. But don't overdo. Hit heavy. Sealing kills contrast. You're not trying to protect it, you're trying to stabilise the surface. One final thing the AI mentioned was the dithering algorithm. Originally, the advice was to set Jarvis dithering within Photoshop. I challenged this as this is part of the XTool processing, so hence why this no longer appears within the Photoshop workflow. Jarvis dithering handles portrait mid-tones better than basic threshold for most photo subjects. That's an empirical finding, not a theoretical one. Run your own test with your image, but Jarvis is where I'd start. If you want to skip the testing and go straight to the validated results, you can download the cheat sheets with the full Photoshop workflow and the proven XTool S1 settings. It's in the description. It'll save you a few sheets of basswood and a couple of hours of frustration. If this kind of AI stress testing is useful to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every video on this channel will now follow the same format. AI gives us a hypothesis, we put it through a real, structured experiment, and we report back with honest results. No guesswork, no paid-for recommendations, just engineering applied to a workshop. In this series, we are working towards perfecting the memorial cards, and next up, I am tackling the hinge. Spoiler, the answer is more nuanced than I expected. I'll see you there.